Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to Sports, a new venture for us, as we mostly deal with music and occasional gaming, but as we are both sports fans, and as you may notice, our name is Ballpark, we thought we'd give our take on some sports that we like, on some sports that we have some knowledge in, and some sports that we know very little about. So today, we watched a race, didn't we, man?
We sure did. We sure did. We saw the first Grand Prix action for what feels like quite a long time at this point. I tell you what.
No doubt. After last week's Spa debacle, it was quite nice to see some racing. Now, I'm just sure you're all wondering at this point, who are these guys? Why are they talking to us? The reason we thought we'd start with the F1 thing. Matt will give you an introduction on himself in a second, but my name's Cameron, and I used to watch F1 as a child, and haven't watched it until about a month and a half ago when Silverstone happened, because I was reliably informed that it was free on a terrestrial channel, and I got a bug. I got real hooked, man. I'm hating people that I didn't know existed 3 weeks ago, you know what I mean? I'm cheering for people that I don't know. It's bizarre. Matt, as the expert on this sport out of the two of us, why don't you give your background?
I'll take expert out of the two of us, and I will say now, there was a certain driver that you mentioned earlier on today, and you did describe your feelings towards him as irrational, which I really did appreciate hearing that. But yeah, no, for me, I grew up a huge F1 fan. It was something that was always on in my house. You can probably tell from my accent that I grew up over in the US, so I had more limited opportunities to see races live, which I know a whole new fan base is dealing with now, but nevertheless, grew up loving the sport. Was a huge Fernando Alonso fan growing up, and that has continued to this very day, as you can tell by the Kamoa cap there. Attended many races, and yeah, I think the turbo hybrid era and Mercedes dominance did start to quell my love of the sport for a few years in there, and being busier on Sundays because of various sports and things meant I missed a couple of years of consistent action. But with lockdown last year and F1 being the only show in town for a little while, it got me right back into it, and I have been fully attached for the last 2 years of what has been some exciting racing, and certainly some exciting racing this year.
Yeah, I think we're quite similar in a lot of ways on that, except for the era I stopped watching, Mika Hakkinen was still racing, which tells you everything you know.
And he's still on his sabbatical. He could come back at any point. I hear there might be a free Mercedes seat.
Wow. Yeah, there could be. I don't know. George Russell got a podium last week, didn't he? So a fair and legitimate podium. So I think he's nailed that one down. Anyway, that's enough about us. Obviously, we watched a race today, and on Friday and Saturday we watched some qualifying and free practice. Now this is obviously the qualification results. I've got them up on screen. I don't think Matt can see them, probably not. Obviously Max Verstappen came in on pole, Hamilton, Bottas, Gasly, Leclerc, Sainz, Giovinazzi, Ocon, Alonso and Ricciardo made up the rest of the top 10. Big shocks out of that for me: Sergio Perez in 16th, Lando Norris in 13th, although I seem to just twigged something now maybe happened with him in qualifying, but I was out a lot yesterday, so I missed it. Matt, what were your highlights from qualification and free practice?
So, let's just roll this back to the start, right? And say that this is the first time that this generation of F1 cars, or indeed, F1 cars for quite a long time, have been going around the Zandvoort circuit in the Netherlands. And it's been a highly anticipated race for a long time. The Dutch fell off of their love of Formula One. Obviously, Max Supermax has brought it back into the public's attention somewhat, and supposed to have the race last year, didn't happen. circuit's entirely reprofiled since they were last racing there in the 80s. I really enjoyed seeing on the coverage this week whenever they were talking about the circuit and its history. They were talking about the rising star Prost taking on, the aging Nicky Lauda at that point in what ended up being his final win. That was the last race that happened at Zandvoort. But yeah, it's a gorgeous circuit. I love the way it looks. Those bank turns, turn 3, the last bank turn coming out onto the front straightaway as well is like, it's incredible to see Formula One cars going around that. And a lot of people have been after old circuits for a while, especially after, some of the flatter new tracks like Sochi and stuff haven't produced great racing. What really stood out for me, free practice was very disrupted. Seb Vettel had his engine failure at free practice 1, which knocked out like 40 minutes of the session. We had a red flag in FP3 as well after Carlos Sainz threw it into the barriers. He made up for that in qualifying, but the one thing you could tell all throughout Friday and coming into Saturday was that traffic was going to be a huge problem in qualifying. And that's what ended up doing it for Lando. That's what ended up doing it for Sergio when he got knocked out in Q1. Obviously had the Haas battle and Mazepin really trying to take it to Mick Schumacher now. And, blowing up Vettel's lap in the process. The Perez results stood out in a big way in Q1. The accidents for both Williams really disrupted Q2 and meant Lando couldn't set his quick lap. But Gio, what a standout performance from Italian Jesus, P7. And, a guy who is fighting for his career didn't have a chance to do anything at Spa. So, he's on a ticking clock in some ways. And what a way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely outstanding for him to get P7, kind of from nowhere, and maybe a weekend where a little bit more of the eyes were on him because obviously his teammate, Kimi Räikkönen, is retiring, and he's got COVID, and then he's not in the race, so, everyone's looking at him and Kubica a little bit more possibly than usual because, I'm not going to lie to you, every weekend so far I've kind of got the Alfa Romeo even in this sport. So, yeah.
And just a very quick word there as well on, Robert Kubica jumping into the car FP3, getting that little bit of running on Saturday morning before qualifying and not actually doing that bad of a job. There have been so many examples of drivers who have disappeared from the sport and come back. I think Paul di Resta was the last one that jumps to mind where he had to fill in for somebody and ended up being seconds off the pace, let alone his teammate. Kubica didn't do too badly across the entire weekend, I would say, and that's great for him, I think, especially when you consider what happened at Le Mans so recently as well with, his team's car dropping out on the last lap, which is heartbreaking in a 24-hour endurance race. So, I don't think we'll be talking too much more about Kubica here, but he did a real good job.
Might be at Monza next weekend. You don't know. Kimi might still be self-isolating, so might have Kubica in that race as well, which would be nice for him and nice to see. Because I even remember he goes way back for me. I remember that name from a long time ago, and then obviously he had I think he had a big accident and all that kind of stuff.
Canada 2007 came back the year afterwards for his first win, and that was the year that BMW Sauber looked like they could be challenging for the championship, but obviously didn't end up happening. And everybody knows what happened afterwards with his rally experience and what that ended up doing to his career.
Yeah, just moving on slightly, obviously we had a race today, and I'll throw up on screen the race results. We obviously had Homeboy and man to the right of Matt, currently Max Verstappen, coming home to take all of the points, or sorry, the 25 that you get for first, not all of them. That'd be a bit unfair. You had Mercedes 2 and 3, Pierre Gasly with solid 4. He's been impressing lately. Charles Leclair, my personal favourite, obviously grew up when Ferrari were dominant and didn't realise they weren't still dominant when I got back into it, so thought I was picking a winning horse. Apparently I wasn't. That's on me. Fernando Alonso, your favourite. Good race from him today. You didn't really get to see too many of his battles because of questionable who we were following throughout the race, but he, as far as I'm aware, gained a couple of spots. Sainz, Perez, Ocon, Norris did well to get, I think, points eventually, and then kind of under that, no one too noticeable. Obviously, Perez for me, I think, gained the most space of the day. So, who's your driver of the day? Who do you think did the best?
It's a really good question. For me, I think I can understand why the fan vote gave it to Sergio Perez, but there is something deep down within me that says you should be giving it to a guy that's, made a real mess of things. And, Sergio's qualifying problems weren't his fault. Did mean that they could get the engine penalty out of the way. He started from the pit lane. But he tried out the move that a lot of guys tried out in F3 very, very early on when he was on the hard tires. I think only 8 or 9 laps in, locked up his right front tire, flat spotted it, meant they had to change that for safety reasons. Some great overtaking, especially into the chicane at the end of the third sector. But, for me, I think really Lando Norris was the standout. Purely for that first stint on the medium tires. He made them work much longer than anybody else. You obviously heard, Lewis Hamilton complaining about his tires towards the end, and Valtteri Bottas had to, yeah, exactly. And, banging in the fastest laps as he goes, Bono, my tires are gone. Yeah, right. And, Bottas had to pit at the end as well. They were much shorter stints than what Lando managed on a fully fueled up car. I have since seen the incident that happened towards the end. He may have been a bit aggressive there, so that's probably the one mark against him. But I thought Lando had a really, really good drive today. And I say that again with my Alpine Kamoa hat on. Fernando did such a great job today. I was so happy with that. Just another classic start from him. And you didn't end up missing much in the way of his overtake science on the last lap. I've got to say it was, very much a DRS assisted thing, but Alpine's fighting a Ferrari on a track that Ferrari looked quite strong on. It was a very, very pleasant surprise.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to go along with that. I mean, obviously, I know they gave it on the television coverage to Perez. For me, if you're in a Red Bull and you're at the back of the grid, I don't think it's that much of an achievement to be overtaking the likes of Mazepin and Schumacher. I mean, I'm not saying I could do it. Obviously, these guys are incredible with what they do, but you're in the fastest car, you're the professional. I feel like you should be making those moves and maybe getting higher. For me, I thought Alonso or Norris, for the reasons you've given. I couldn't believe how long it took him to pit compared to everyone else. When you saw the state of Hamilton's tyres, sort of on those mediums, I know they weren't new, but that was, and to actually be keeping up the pace, and that was a really, really good job from him. But Alonso, man, there's just something special about him. Something special about the way he drives, and I wish we got to see more of it. To be honest with you, we didn't get to see the him pit signs at the end. Which was a shame, or maybe we did and I just missed it. But
they didn't hit on it in the world feed. They did show it on Sky's coverage afterwards, and again it was a fairly simple DRS assisted into the first corner, but you can give it to him based on his first lap antics alone, I think. And what I really love about Fernando, and this segment could now go on for 2 hours after I've said those words, but it's the fact that you're seeing all of the experience now coming through from everything up to this point in his career. Like he did the endurance racing. There were a lot of chunks of that race where he was very conservative on the tires, but it paid off at the end. And the moves around the bank corners, that's a guy who ran very well at Indy in his first year at the 500 before a Honda engine exploded, much like, his entire stint at McLaren, second stint at McLaren, obviously. So it was great to see him pulling all of that old stuff out of the bag there. And old guys still got it. Can't wait to see what that 2022 Alpine looks like.
I want to see one last dance, man. I want Alonso to get the car. I want him to go to one. I hope Alpine get it right and he's got a chance to actually. I think he's still got it. We saw that at I can't remember what the race after Silverstone was, but where Hamilton and him were battling, and Hamilton couldn't get past, man. And a car that's much, much quicker. and that's a 7-time world champion. Yeah,
He
Alonso still got
looked
it.
he looked like the old Alonso defending against Schumacher at Imola, all
Mm,
those years ago,
it really, really was
when they were at the
beautiful.
Hungaroring. It was brilliant.
Yeah, 100%. So, just a very quick point. Who do you think got strategy right and wrong today? For me, I'm thinking there was only one really notable moment of strategy failure for me, and that was putting Lewis back into traffic after a second stop. That seemed like a big error. I know it's hard to time these things, but I don't, you cost him any chance really. I don't think he ever had a chance, so it didn't really matter in the end. But you got no chance after that happened.
Mercedes definitely had a bad day when it came to strategy. I think the one thing that's worth mentioning is, they interviewed Toto after the race, and what he was saying was that they really wanted to force Red Bull to put the hard compound tire on that car. Max didn't have any sets of mediums left after that second pit stop there, so it was too early for him to go onto the softs. Had to try the hard tire, and there hadn't been a lot of hard running. And the Red Bull, on balance across the season, hasn't been great with a hard set of tires anyway. They've normally been slower on the mediums than the Mercedes have, so they really thought that was their throw of the dice to try and get them back into a race where they didn't have the same level of pace in the car. Whether they could have held out a couple more laps, maybe, but they certainly didn't want to put the hard tire on Lewis's car, which they would have had to have done at that point. And obviously, there was a lot of complaining from Lewis after that. It all goes back to Friday, though. When he had the oil leak and ended up losing all of that running in FP2. If they had more data on the hard tire, maybe something different could have happened earlier on. And I remember saying to you, middle of the race as well, that I was surprised after Bottas's first stop that they'd put him onto the medium tires. Bottas is a guy who chews through his tires really, really easily, even when he's running in the clean air. So it seemed inevitable that they were going to have to pit him. That obviously led to the whole situation that we had on the second to last lap and necessitated the extra tire change from Lewis as well. In terms of who did strategy well, though, I think there's a lot of people you can point to who say didn't go down very well. You go back to McLaren, right? Lando's strategy worked out very well for him, and got him into the points on what could have been a very difficult day otherwise. Got him behind his teammate, managed to make that easy pass at that point to, set him into some clear air. And if he hadn't been defending Perez from behind, then he could have been making a dent into Ocon and maybe both Alpines. Maybe actually ended up saving a few points for Carlos Sainz in the end. So, the McLaren pit wall did well. I think everybody was feeling it out. It seemed nailed on for a one-stop race at the start of the weekend, but it was great to see that there were a lot of people trying out the two-stop, which is, something that you don't see that often these days, the alternating types of strategy.
We even got a 3-stop from one team on 2 of their drivers, so that was oh sorry, just the one. But yeah, that was quite interesting. I guess it's the thing of coming to a track that you haven't been to in 20 years. The technology's different, the tires are different, everything has changed. You can't use that old data. You can't really glean that much from it. Maybe you can a bit. I'm not like technical with the not in the pit wall, so I don't know what they can tell from it. But those free practice sessions would have been crucial. And you go back to Hamilton not being in FP2 and not getting that hard tire information. I said Red Bull seemed to use Ferrari's data on the hard tires and seemed comfortable with that. You wonder if maybe they can make a decision based on that. Who knows? Obviously, it's all hindsight, 2020 vision. I don't really feel like they ever had a chance to catch him Verstappen today. I think even when he's on the hards and Lewis on the mediums, I mean he gets it down to just over a second and a half, but he just never ever felt like he was going to be quicker overall, even with that tyre difference. So yeah, one of those. Kind of controversial question. We heard all weekend that the drivers love this track and it's a really great track, and it's beautiful, like you said at the start. It looks really cool. I love the beach when you get all the overhead shots and all that stuff. Is it a good racetrack though? For me, after obviously discount Spa, but after Silverstone and the subsequent race after that, which I have again forgotten, which I'm sure Hungary, yes, that was it, the Hungarian Grand Prix, which were hugely exciting weekends. This kind of felt a bit like a procession from start to finish. Not a lot happened other than in the lower middle order. Did it feel that way for you? Do you feel like it's a good track, it's worth persisting with, or is it just going to become another Monaco?
Absolutely worth persisting with. You're going to see in the coming weeks some tracks that really, if you're basing it on pure racing, don't deserve to be on the calendar. Sochi is one of the prime examples of that. Abu Dhabi is another one, although they've reprofiled a few corners around there, which may end up helping with this. I mean, look, Zandvoort didn't look like a track that was going to produce some overtaking. I think we saw more overtaking today than was probably expected, in all honesty, and a little bit of overtaking in some places where people didn't think that would be happening. I'm thinking particularly that, both onto that back straight, the second one with the DRS, but at the end of it as well. It's so incredibly tight around there that when you have the long flowing corners leading up to it, it makes it so hard to follow the cars, stay close enough, have that delta that will get you by him. So, what's going to be crucial, I think, is to see how the 2022 cars go around there. Obviously, we've got the new regulations coming in next year, and a lot of the changes that they have made have been about making it easier to follow. I can't remember off the top of my head. I think the 22 cars are going to be fairly similar in terms of the width as our current cars now. Formula One cars are very wide, and on a narrow track like Zandvoort, makes it hard to get alongside, makes it hard to complete that move, through some of the tighter, twistier corners where you might have been able to get it done elsewhere. So if the cars are easier to follow next year, you're going to have an absolute banger of a race. It's a gorgeous track. It looks incredible during qualifying when they're doing those, low fuel, soft tires, everything turned up to 11 runs. And I don't think you can argue with the spectacle of that crowd, the thumping dance music, diving through the dunes like you were talking about earlier. It's just so fantastic to see that spectacle around it, especially when some of the newer tracks that have been added to the calendar in recent years are not producing the racing or indeed the atmosphere that some people would have hoped for. But, drivers seem to like it. It's the same thing with Turkey as well. That was a track that the drivers really ended up enjoying, but it didn't produce great racing. It's obviously a very different feeling for them sitting in the cars than us sitting in the stands or watching it on TV at home.
Well, it probably feels better if there's no chance anyone can get around you, right? You don't have to worry about anything, you can just drive. Yeah, no, definitely shout out to the Dutch crowd, by the way, because that was quite a special moment, and it's always nice to see the homeboy win, I say through gritted teeth. So yeah, congratulations to Verstappen. It's great to. I do think it's good when you have a home crowd, and it's the first time in a long time that Formula One's been to Holland. It's only going to grow the sport, which I'm suddenly invested in. That country has got a hero to get behind, and obviously they were out for him today, and they made a lot of noise. It was really cool to see. Matt, what was your moment of the weekend? I want to give you mine first because I don't want you to steal it. It was clearly Lando's interview at the end. That tells you enough about the racing action that happened, but Lando's interview brought a bit of joy to me. I love seeing people just cracking up and being in uncontrollable fits of laughter, so that was my moment of the weekend. What was yours?
Difficult question. I think if you really press me on it, I'm going to say, Alonso's first sector of the first lap of the race, getting squeezed out by his teammate, making contact. I have no idea how both the Alpines managed to make that through that race without, a front wing going under somebody's car or a puncture or anything like that. But finding that space on the outside, really sending it into the banked turn 3 across the top, taking that IndyCar line. and then powering out and setting Alpine up for what ended up being a really good afternoon that they needed. So I think it would be that honorable mention, obviously going to the clouds of orange smoke that engulfed the drivers on lap 1 and at the end of that as well. I think that was such a wonderful, wonderful spectacle. And also maybe an honorable mention for Ted Kravitz, looking like he popped a couple of mollies before the race.
Moving swiftly on.
It's fine, you can edit these now. So
let's take a look at the championship standings. Obviously, Max took the lead today. He's 3 points ahead of Hamilton now, which sets us up so nicely going forward. I think we're gonna have a real battle. Head says Verstappen at this point. Honestly, heart wants Hamilton to win it. Obviously, I'm from England and British. I'm not the biggest Max Verstappen fan. I just don't really like Red Bull in general in any kinds of sports, but that's a story for another day. Yeah, it's going to be really good. And then if we just take a brief look at the constructors, Mercedes are ahead, but that's probably because they keep messing up Perez in quali. So yeah. Oh, go on.
I really want to just, you're saying that your head says Verstappen, and I think you might be in for an education over the next few races based on, again, what we've seen all throughout this turbo hybrid era. And certainly Red Bull have got a quicker car, but Ferrari had a quicker car in 2018. Lewis Hamilton remains blessed. I don't think you can count him anywhere near out until, we get probably even a few laps after the end of the race in Abu Dhabi.
No, I obviously you're right. You don't win 7 World Championship and have 99 race wins without, knowing how to win titles, and that's something Verstappen's got to learn. There's absolutely no doubt that he is going to have that experience. And I think if he gets one now, he could possibly go on to have a close to dominant era, such as, obviously we have to see what the rating is for next year, and hopefully Red Bull fall off the face of the planet, but we'll never know. So Monza next weekend, what are we expecting? Who's your favourite going in?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think you can't look past Mercedes' dominance around that circuit in recent years. Red Bull have managed to get a lot of weaknesses out of the car, and the Honda engine of now is not the Honda engine of even a couple of years ago in terms of power, in terms of reliability, anything like that. And Monza is a track where you need to be hitting those top speeds. So I really think that you could be in for a situation where Lewis is running away with this one a little bit, but I don't think any race this year has gone anywhere near how it was predicted to go, probably with the exceptions of Monaco and indeed potentially today as well. So we'll have to see it. It's great. I love the triple header. I wish we had 3 races within this triple header, but we'll have to see how they go at the Cathedral of Speed.
Can't disagree with any of that because I don't know any better. So just looking forward to a nice race next time out. Yeah, and like you say, I hate the 2-week wait, even though I've only had it once or twice because I come back to this a couple of weeks ago. Boy, I'm hooked. I am real hooked. Okay, that is everything from us. We will be back next Sunday. I'm assuming this is going out on a Sunday or a Monday, or it will be somewhere anyway. And we'll be back with post Monza. So thank you for joining us and good night.